Speeding up the development process is definitely not easy, but it is possible. You can go from changes that take 3 to 4 days and are filled with bugs to getting those same changes out in a day, half a day with little to no bugs. My name's Isaac, previous CTO of a funded startup and the tech lead of a 500 million D2C brand. I've been coding since I was 14. I have built technical teams. In this video, I'm going to be explaining what kind of constraints you're looking at and how to get around them. The main concept I want to talk about is reducing the complexity of the website. I know that sounds simple, but this is like an age-old battle and it's something that is a constant ongoing thing. I'm going to be discussing what it looks like when things are complex, how it affects the website and the development process, and then steps to take to reduce the complexity. So a little bit of context. I have a friend who has been in and around the tech scene for quite a while. We used to have an agency together, but recently he started coding and he's starting to realize how complicated things can become. He has a few friends who are pro athletes and he compared it to them. He said at a certain level of competition, they've said it doesn't feel exciting when you win anymore. It's just relieving you don't lose. We were saying how it's very similar that devs feel this way because when you have such a big system that you're maintaining and controlling, your huge fear that you're just trying to get through every day is not breaking the system. Now, as a business owner, I completely respect you don't give a shit. However, I do think it's important to understand. A big, complex machine has a lot of things that can go wrong, and it makes it very difficult to tinker with and adjust without causing further complications. And in the dev process, as things get slow to put out, a lot of it is because fear of making changes or not understanding how things work, or just too many things touching other things, and it's even what might look like a small change is a big hairy problem. Structurally, you can make this simpler by reducing the amount of moving parts in your system. The less things that are moving, the less things that can break, which also means the less things you have to focus on and worry about when you're pushing code live. So imagine this is a website and these are two separate pages. We have very similar components on each, right? The structure's the same. So we've got the hero, we've got the nav, a collections grid, and a product grid. But as you'll see, some of them are different. We got hero A and hero B, and they look different. So hero A, single image, hero B, two images side by side. That's fine. But then as you look a little bit closer, you start to notice as well that the code snippets inside them are different. So hero A has snippet 1, snippet 2, hero B has snippet 3. To some degree, this type of complexity is unavoidable, but I want to explain a little bit of what processes look like when you have this kind of complexity and help you understand why reducing it is beneficial. So let's say on this page 2, we're going to call it, we wanted to update the product grid. We wanted the product cards to now show ratings, like star ratings, or maybe like they look a different color when they do it. Okay, cool. So we make that change and we push it live. Everything's fine. But then someone flags, oh, on product grid A, it looks like the change hasn't been made. That's because number one, they're two different components, but also because the code snippets are different. So we think, oh, okay, it's a bit annoying, whatever. Let's make the change on product grid A. So now we change code snippet 3. But then we come back a little bit later and it's like, oh, we had an issue. The product grid now bleeds into the collection grid. Like they don't work well together. The styling's a little bit off. I'm a little bit confused. It's like, well, why would that happen? Because we used the same code that we put in code snippet 4 and 5 and that worked fine. So why doesn't it work when we add it to code snippet 3? And that's because code snippet 1 doesn't have things that code snippet 2 has. Code snippet 2 has some sort of way of like adding padding to the bottom and code snippet 1 doesn't. It's like, oh, that's annoying. Okay, whatever. So then we fix code snippet 1 so that it works the same and now everything's good. And then a week later, we realize, whoa, hang on. Hero B is messed up. Why is that the case? You know, has it been like this the whole time? And we look into it and then we find out it's because the changes that we made to product grid A for code snippet 3 is also similar to the code snippet 3 in the hero, and that caused an issue when now the images aren't rendering properly. This has happened many times. This is what code looks like, and it's one of the reasons why it's so confusing and annoying to work with. But it's very important to understand that when things are connected, it's very difficult to detach them. Now, this is always going to be one of the main problems you face anytime you're building a system because they're complex and messy. But the aim of the game is, can we reduce the amount of code snippets that are going around and have clear divisions between the things we build? So for example, hero A and hero B do look completely different, but is it possible we can make sure that code snippet 1 and 2 are the only things in hero A and B, and maybe we just change the settings to make them similar? And it's the same for, the collections grid. Can we just use code snippet 1? The reason this is important is because one, it means that if you make a change on one place, so let's say, the change we made in the product grid B at the first, it would have automatically updated product grid A. But also, the more that things are coupled together, you will see the breaks instantly, which I know sounds terrible. From a testing perspective, this is a good thing. So if we are trying to change the product grid, and the product grid, it was product grid A, and it only uses code snippet 3, for example. If we do something wrong and it's going to break the hero, we see that on the same page instantly. So the developer feedback is much faster because there's fewer things that can break. So when they do break, it's catastrophic. Sounds bad, but it's good because it means that you catch it earlier on. And it's fixable. Faster to fix. So, basically the aim of the game is reducing the amount of moving parts. So the A is easy to diagnose what's going on. B, easy to change. And C, that's it. So the main benefits of reducing the elements you use on the website is, number one, there's less things that can break. So every time a development does a deployment, it's a little bit easier to monitor and check how things are going. And then secondly, it standardizes the build process. So if you think about this as from a business perspective, if you have a team of 10 people and everybody organizes their task in notes, someone comes along and tries to organize it on Trello. Very soon they're going to join notes because everyone else is doing it. They understand this sort of a culture. Whereas if you only have a few people doing it, it's a bit hands in the air. It's the same with the development process. If people are reusing specific elements constantly, the way these elements were built almost becomes an ingrained culture for how you build on top of it. And at first, that probably doesn't sound like a big deal, but it makes bugs faster to diagnose because everything's built using a similar format and similar foundation. And it also makes training a lot faster because someone can come on board, they can understand one, maybe two core concepts that are used throughout the website and apply it to just about everywhere else. Whereas if you have a website that's been built by multiple devs over a very long period and they're not reusing components, people, every time they approach a problem that seems like a new problem, they will just handle it in the way they think is best instead of using older approaches. And that means that you end up having code that makes sense for a bit. And every time you get to like the side aspects, it just branches off and goes a completely different way. Then you also have issues where, maybe one dev is good at one area of the code and they can understand it, but they can't really fix the code that another dev has made. And these kind of problems start to arise. Now, if you're going about fixing this and you're deciding this is something you need to work on, really you kind of need two people. You need some sort of technical lead and you need a good project manager. If you're watching this video, you probably don't have both. So more likely than not, you will have to be the project manager that's pushing for the growth in this aspect. The first thing you want to do is create an audit of the website. You want to go through every page and every section, you want to make a list of them. So this is going to sound very granular, and it is, but on the website, you will have the hero, you will have the nav bar, the announcement bar, the product grid. You want to make a list of all these things and understand which pages they're on. You will have a humongous list at first, and that's absolutely fine, but you will start to see certain things which can be grouped together. So then after you've got the whole list, you'll then have like product grids, you'll have collection grids, you'll have different sort of pockets, and you want to group things together. And you want to sit down with your lead developer and actually understand which things are and aren't the same thing, or which things can be condensed and combined. This is not a project for the lighthearted. It is a big deal because it's potentially rewriting the whole website. However, if you can get most things that are in a singular bucket, so let's say, everything that uses some sort of product grid, there will be elements that are repeatable but may not actually be repeated in the code. So for example, every product grid will have some version of a product card, which is the thing that shows, the star ratings, the title, the vendor, the picture. Can this element be reused in each of these places? And this is a conversation, an open-ended conversation with the lead developer. But you get as granular as you can with things that can and can't be repeated, and you structure how they will be reused. They're obviously not going to look the same everywhere. There's going to be different sort of styling and visuals, but these can be built into settings. And as long as the foundational pieces are the same, you can reuse the code. The reason you want to do this is you start to build your own component library. Because now if you start to understand, okay, like we've always got our product cards and our product grids, and you build it in a way where it works on each of these pages it's already in, it means you can just keep re-adding it to any other page. So instead of, if the complexity comes up to build a new page, and you go, okay, we need a product grid, we need blah, blah, blah. You've already got these things you can just reuse and slap in there. Now, Obviously, to make all these changes and fixes is a huge process, but something that will help massively is if you now start integrating that into the roadmap. So the second part, now that you have an audit of all the individual elements on the website, speak to your designer, whatever builds you're doing for the next month or two, do whatever you can to fit within the limits of things that already exist. So, is there a shape of an like image banner that you can use on the new page that you're building? Can you use the product card in a certain way in a, maybe you scale it bigger or something like that, but how many different ways can you use the elements that you already have to build the new pages? Over time, you want to build what's called a component library, which is when you basically have your own reference for like buttons, texts, spacing, everything like that. And the designer literally just compiles a list of pre-existing components, and it means the developer can also do something similar. They will have the code already there, and they will just put it together in a new way and ship it. And that's how you get changes that take 3-4 days into like a day and a half. And because you're not even building anything new, it's very unlikely there's going to be action. Another way you can fix this is you can literally just buy a component library. If you Google Shopify component library, there are things out there. There are themes that you can sort of buy and gut. You can take out certain elements from them. But yeah, I would definitely recommend doing the audit. It is a big job. I'm not going to say that it's not, but you will know if you've reached that point. Like you will get to, most brands do get to a point where they're just like, oh, like putting out code is just like pulling teeth, and it's some things got to change. So whereas before it was like, I just need the code to work so that we can keep selling, you're not reaching a point where it's like, I'm going to have to start prioritizing this because we keep having problems. When you reach that point, it is better to just be a little bit vicious and get it done with for once. And there's actually, if you can build in this idea of reusing elements and sort of, let's call it code efficiency, it actually builds a better culture around building, and it will set the team up in future for just faster deployments, less errors, and smarter building. So I hope that was helpful. I would love to hear if you've been through a similar process, or if you've reached a point where your system was so bottlenecked you couldn't get any work out. How did you deal with it? What were the results? Would love to hear.